Hello and welcome to episode 287 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and we are halfway into one of my new favorite months of the year, Dragon Quest month. I love Dragon Quest, and I brought four other lovers of Dragon Quest here today to talk about Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen, which, being a 1990 NES game, makes this the second oldest game we've had a dedicated episode for on the podcast. Let's introduce those who are dedicating themselves to that game today, starting with Wes Iliff.
Hello, hello.
Also joining Wes and I, Zach Wilkerson.
Hi there.
And Alana Hagues.
Hello.
And Audra Bowling.
Hi.
We have a full house with 3 jacks and 2 queens, and there was some kings and queens, and maybe even some jacks that we were dealing with in the early stages of Dragon Quest IV. Now Dragon Quest IV is divided up into 5 chapters, listeners. Maybe the Chapters of the Chosen subtitle clued you into that. And Chapter 5 is maybe more than half of the game. So we're going to spend this episode talking about the very diverse cast of the first 4 chapters, and then sort of set up Chapter 5 for the next episode. Before we get into the specifics of that, you told me before recording, Alana and Audra, this is the first play of Dragon Quest IV for each of you. So, what are your early impressions? Starting with you, Alana.
It's pretty good. I mean, I don't really have a huge storied history with the series in general, but I've known them to be fairly traditional. Dragon Quest IV feels very different to anything I've played from that era in particular because of the way it's spread out. So you've already said, Chapter 5 is most of the game, and I'm assuming that's where, the traditional Dragon Quest starts, but, the way the 4 chapters split between, 4 different groups of characters is really, really fascinating. And not only does it, change up or teach you how to play an RPG specifically, but, it also gives you many different flavors. 3 of them are mostly combat based, but one of them you're running a shop, one of them you're escaping from somewhere, one of them you're just being this tomboy princess doing her own thing, and then the first one's just teaching you the basics of an RPG. So I'm really surprised considering this is a 1990 RPG on the NES, so it's very cool so far.
Yeah, Dragon Quest IV, unusually forward-thinking for its era. I have a feeling that will come up again in the course of these 2 podcast episodes. But Audra, what are your early impressions of Dragon Quest IV, at least through the first half?
I really enjoy it. It's actually my 3rd Dragon Quest game that I've ever played, so I don't have that much exposure to the series.
Okay, what are those other 2? How much Dragon Quest have you Dragon Quested before?
Dragon Quest IX and Dragon Quest XI's.
All right, maybe not the 2 I would have guessed, but that's still pretty cool. But you were playing Dragon Quests from 3 different decades there, because if my math is right, that's 2009, 2017, and now 1990. So you're all over the map.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one I'll try next. Although I think I might just go to Dragon Quest V just to see how it.
Good choice.
5 is an excellent choice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mutual agreement here, especially since we have 2 episodes on Dragon Quest V recorded some years ago. But let's stick to 2021 for now. Alana, we didn't really go into it for you. How much Dragon Quest have you played?
So I've also played 9 and 11, but I've also played 8 and 5, so this is my 5th Dragon Quest. I've played Builders 2 and Heroes as well, the very first, Muso Dragon Quest Warriors game. And I really like that, but yeah, in general, unfortunately, living in the UK, it's a typical repeated problem over here. Dragon Quest never made it here until Dragon Quest VIII, so we had to wait until the PS2 era to even get a single game in this series, and now they're all available because the DS releases came over here, and obviously all the mobile versions of 1, 2, and 3, and the Switch versions of 1, 2, and 3 are all over here, so it's not for lack of accessibility anymore. It's just simply time that I haven't really got around to them. So, yeah.
Right on. And I guess I'll go next. I am very much against RPG and video game elitism and gatekeeping, so I don't want that to take this tone. But I've played basically all of them. I've played all of Dragon Quest 1 through 11, other than 10. Multiple versions for a couple of those. And I've played not all the spin-offs, but a couple of the Monsters games, Dragon Quest Rocket Slime for the DS, which is a weird, fun, underrated gem. And I owned both of the Dragon Quest Heroes games, both of the Musou games on PS4, but didn't finish either of them. And that's definitely not for a lack of love of Dragon Quest, and more of a disdain for Musou on my part. I've tried several of them, and I'm like, man, people really love the quashing the Yellow Turban Rebellion like twice a year for 30 years, which is an exaggeration, but please don't ask me to fact check my Dynasty Warriors releases.
Oh, this is why I'm here. It's fine.
Oh no! Oh no! Well, I think one of my friend Eric has maybe 4 shelves of PS2, 3, 4, and 5 games, and one entire shelf is just Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors.
Oh wow!
I think everyone's got a Musou friend. Have
yeah,
they not?
yeah. Everyone's got a Musou friend,
Mine
and
mine is Wes.
Yeah, look to your left, look to your right. If you don't have a Musou friend, you are the Musou friend.
Sollosi, you're just waiting, and no, wait, you've got Eric. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I got a Musou friend. I know where he lives. If I want to go over there and say, and like, oh, how many spears does Yukimura Sanada have in this one? He'll be able to give me the number. Like,
Excellent.
But that's Sengoku Musou and not Sangoku Musou. But we're going to go to Wes Iliff Musou. Wes, what's your background with Dragon Quest and maybe 4 in particular?
Yeah, it's been a part of my life basically as long as I can remember. Dragon Quest 1 is how I learned how to read, so I've been around for a while. Played, I think, all of them except 3 potentially on the NES. And Dragon Warrior 4 was like my favorite game ever since the time I played it, and that has not dulled much over time. Played most of the spin-offs as they've come out, or as I found them. There are a handful that have been released in America that I just never quite got my hands on. College years, always a little short on cash. But otherwise, yeah, I've been in there for a while.
All right, and Zach, what Dragon Quest have you played, and maybe when did you first encounter 4?
So my first Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior game was Dragon Warrior 1. I'm not sure that it taught me how to read, although Wes, that's impressive, because Dragon Warrior 1 uses like a very particular style of English on the NES. Yeah, but I didn't beat it. Like my first ever clear by myself RPG was Dragon Warrior 2. Which again, it's all downhill from there. Once you beat that one, it's so much easier. But the first time I went on vacation with my cousin at some point and saw him beat Dragon Warrior 4, and I beat Dragon Warrior 4 on the NES, and then I've beaten Dragon Warrior 4 on the DS once, and this is my 4th time through. But I'm a huge Dragon Quest fan. The only ones I haven't played, I played a little bit of 9, but I got into the game a little late on that one, and at this point, there's not a lot there.
9 without
there used to be.
Yeah, 9 without the online features is a bit of a tough sell. If there's anyone that deserves to be remade with to be a bit more feature complete, it's 9.
I'd be all over that. And obviously, I haven't played 10, but I've played the rest of the mainline games. I have not played any of the side games, not the Monsters games, none of those. But in terms of mainline, I adore Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior, and have since I was 4 years old. So we're talking 31 years now. I've loved Dragon Quest.
Oh, and geez, you know what? I think I didn't really mention how I got into Dragon Quest, just that I've played most of them, or many of them. So I'll get into it a little bit. I mean, my first RPG was not Dragon Quest anything. It was Final Fantasy IV, but I thought it was Final Fantasy II at the time. But after playing that at a friend's house, I decided I needed to play more of these RPG things. But I had an NES and not a Super NES when this happened in, I don't know, in the 93, 94, 95 range. So I went to video stores, asked about RPGs, and was pointed for the NES, and was pointed to Final Fantasy I and the first 4 Dragon Quest games, all of which I never owned but rented multiple times. And of those 5 games, I guess if you include FF1, I didn't beat any of them on the NES, and was frankly confused and sometimes unable to navigate them, being, let's say, 9 years old and not totally and trying to play my first couple JRPGs. But the one I liked the most was Dragon Warrior 4, because it had sort of the most colorful characters, and I was able to very clearly figure out what was happening, which was not the case, accidentally playing someone else's save file in the middle of FF1.
Wow. Yeah.
We've all been there. At least I have.
Yeah, so I didn't beat any of them on the NES, but when I was emulating every JRPG under the sun in the early 2000s, when I was a teenager, I decided, you know what, maybe I could revisit Dragon Quest, because I remember really liking 4 back in the day, and then, or I should say, I was still calling it Dragon Warrior then, and around then is when I was like, oh, it's Dragon Quest actually, and there's a bunch that didn't come out in the United States. And I emulated Dragon Warrior 4 on the NES and finally beat it. Save states helped. And also played Dragon Quest 5 and 6 for the first time, almost back to back to back. And then when I was in the middle of doing all of that, Dragon Quest 8 was on the horizon. And I adored that the first time I played it. So I basically went from not finishing any Dragon Quest games in the early 2000s to beating 7 of them in a row in the early to mid 2000s.
You managed to jump right back in as soon as they revived Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest in the West then, huh?
Yeah, basically. And I think after I beat 8, I bought the Game Boy Color versions of 1 through 3, and that's how I beat those, because that seemed like a more attractive prospect to me than emulating 1, 2, and 3 on the NES.
It's an excellent choice.
Yeah, so... And then when I finished those, that's when the excellent run of DS Dragon Quest games started coming out. So like the say the 03 to 2010 run of me playing video games was a Dragon Quest essence for me, and that and where I played and replayed almost all of them that I could around that time. For a long time, the one I didn't play was Dragon Warrior 7, because I bought the PS1 version, but found it so slow that I moved on to other games.
Intimidated, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I didn't beat that one until 2017 with the 3DS version that came out. But back to Dragon Warrior 4. It was the one that I was the most interested in when I was renting them all in the NES, and the first one I actually finished when I started emulating and messing around with JRPGs on my computer around, let's say, 16 or 17 years ago. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. This is my third time playing Dragon Quest IV to completion, hopefully, because I finished it once on that emulator and then once on the DS release a little later. And I was intending to play this on the mobile version because I thought that'd be a fun new twist to play it. But partway through Chapter 1, I decided that I hated the touch controls so much that I just went back to my DS version. It would have been better if I had a tablet, or if there was a Switch version, which there isn't. But on my small-ish smartphone, it was not a great perspective. But how is everyone playing Dragon Quest IV this time around?
So I am playing the mobile version of Dragon Quest IV. Yeah, I would agree with you on the controls. They're not ideal, and as far as I'm aware, they're slightly different from 1 to 3, and I don't know about 5 and 6 on mobile or the rest of them. They are a bit finicky. You can move so essentially it's like a wheel that you use and you point it in 8 different directions to move the character around. It takes a bit of getting used to, especially if you're trying to enter doors and stuff like that. The amount of times I've nearly gone through a door and I'm like, come on. But yeah, it's not ideal, but I've gotten pretty used to it pretty quickly because luckily there's nothing too complicated about this game, so it's not like I'm trying to navigate any ridiculous puzzles or anything like that yet. So... yeah, I like it. And generally, I think the key difference with Dragon Quest IV is it's got party chat back in, which was taken out of the DS version. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. And that's a puzzling choice because party chat, basically, I think in Dragon Quest V and 6 on the DS, you press Y when you're in town or in most parts of the game, and your party will comment on what's going on around you. And in Dragon Quest IV, with 8 really interesting, diverse party members with distinct personalities, that actually sounds like a really fun thing to check out every so often. But it was removed from the DS version, from the North American and European DS versions, and I don't have a great reason why. I mean, I guess resources.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll have to be.
Probably, yeah. It's a weird choice, like you said, because this is such a the first half of the game is such a character-focused game, and the person you're controlling is almost silent. The only time they ever speak is in party chat. So it's you're taking Alina's personality away from her or Ryan's personality away from them, just by removing that feature. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm also playing on mobile, and I agree. Like the only reason I'm playing it on mobile is because I lost my copy of Dragon Quest IV for the DS. I can't find it because I moved recently. But yeah, I mean, like the party chat stuff in the first 4 chapters, like a lot of times when I check party chat, it's just like a bunch of dots, which is very common in Japanese RPGs. But otherwise, like I got used to the controls eventually. But it feels very much like the DS version.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I only played the beginning of the mobile version before deciding to switch. But like the opening credits and the look of the game is almost indistinguishable from the DS version.
Yeah, I'm playing the DS version at the moment.
It's a fine version. I loved it in 2008 when I first played it, and now those DS versions are getting a little bit hard to find now. Like I think
also very expensive.
They're really expensive.
I am playing on mobile.
Yep, I'd rather pay £15 than £75 just for a cartridge.
Yeah, I think I was looking at prices for it was either 5 or 6 going for over $100 on Amazon, which is crazy to me. I think Dragon Quest V might be my most valuable DS game, other than Pokemon Heart Gold, which is somehow incredibly in demand nowadays.
Me too, yeah.
Wes, I think you haven't chimed in yet. Are you on mobile or DS or going hardcore, emulating the Japanese PS1 version?
I briefly considered going really old school and going back to NES just for the old time's sake, but I'm playing a well-loved copy of the DS version that stuck with me through a half dozen moves, and thankfully still works. Half dozen moves, few playthroughs from me, 1 or 2 from my spouse, just still survives. And you know, it's I find that the party chat in Dragon Quest, it's never as like this big, robust, event-driven thing like you get like out of Tales skits or something like that, but especially in this game where all of your main party members are, you know, later become your actual party, it does feel rough to miss it. And occasionally during like Torneco's chapter, when a lot of times that party chat helps determine, you know, it tells you where to go next a little bit, gives you a little guidance. Really missing that during those moments.
Yeah, they're not hugely impactful or dramatic, but they're more like quips. But they're still entertaining and add a little bit of flavor. And again, this is a flavorful cast that I wish we got more commentary from.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I guess let's dive into the story a little bit. The main character of Chapter 1 is Ragnar McRyan, which is, you know, a very cute appropriation combining his NES name of Ragnar with his Japanese name of Ryan. Forget if it was, I think, Alana, you're the one that said that Chapter 1 is sort of teaching the player what an RPG is. Because like Dragon Quest 1, this is a largely single-character game where basically Ragnar has to solve the mystery around one castle town and one smaller town, and learn the balance of going out and fighting until you run out of healing items, then making it back to town to restock, and getting better weapons, and then going out again. That's a very comfortable loop to many of us, probably. But it revolves around the children of the kingdom disappearing, Ragnar uncovering that they were captured by demons, and then rescuing the children. And I think it took me right around like an hour or maybe even 55 minutes. It's pretty brisk.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
You know what really struck me, you know, in the NES version before all this, there's this little prologue in the DS and mobile versions where you get like a brief introduction to the actual main character, which didn't exist in the NES version. You jumped right into Ragnar. It had a little chapter heading, but that was about it. And the first time I played that NES version, I was a kid. I didn't know what the structure of this was, so I just assumed, oh, this is my silent main character that I'm playing as. And the only thing that like tripped anything different was that up till this point, every single main character of a Dragon Quest game had been very blue in color palette. You jump in with this bright pink soldier, and you're like, oh, that's weird. They made a big change here, but until the end of the chapter, you almost don't really get a lot of hint at that point. It's a lot harder to keep that kind of secret when you're dealing with older players now and, you know, the internet age.
And weirdly, the art for the Dragon Quest III main character has a lot of sort of blue, yellow, and pink in their palette, at least in their character art. But every sprite in Dragon Quest III has to be a 2-color combination. So I think the hero is just blue and white, and like fighters are just green and white. It's a little messy. But in Dragon Quest IV, each of these characters does have a distinct color palette, and Ragnar McRyan's is a a mightily pink suit of armor with a red cape and a lustrous mustache. And if this game was like Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, he would be leading the party in the mustache stat. Even though Torneko would have a pretty good mustache as well.
Pink armor and Scottish is like two real big pluses, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. Ragnar is silent in his chapter, but everyone else in the castle sure as hell isn't. And I hope you can at least understand some of the cues of written Scottish.
Yeah, I thought I was good at it, but then they said like tower in like this really thick accent, and I was like, wait, what word's that? And I'm like, hang on a minute, let me go back and see. Let me channel Leona for a second and see what I can do. I'm like, yeah, okay.
So localization deepened to throw that in Chapter 1 at you, too.
Yeah, really.
The localization of Dragon Quest has been really strong and full of personality since Dragon Quest VIII. And I think in the Japanese versions, a lot of different towns will have like vocal cues or tics, but nothing like them like using every European accent on the continent for different Dragon Quest games. The worst one for it is 7, where in the 3DS version of 7, I had to like Google certain terms just to figure out what language they were emulating.
I feel very powerful sometimes playing Dragon Quest because I'm like, yeah, I get all this. It's fine. It's just the accent I have to get.
I think Dragon Quest 4, playing it again like 13 years ago, is how I found out that Bairn was slang for a child in Scots.
Yep.
It took me a little longer to get that.
Yeah. Oh, if this is your first time playing, and maybe you don't watch as much Scottish television as Alana or Leona.
I don't watch any Scottish television.
Yeah. I have seen at least 2 series of Taskmaster with one Scots contestant. So that's about as deep as I can go.
That's where all my knowledge comes from too. I'm with you.
But we deal with some vaguely Russian accents in Chapter 2, some Irish in Chapter 3. Again, if you're playing Dragon Quest VII's 3DS remake, you go into a whole bunch more. The one that I couldn't figure out at the time ended up being Swedish. But yeah, the localization of Dragon Quest, like, there's a lot of accents, a lot of quirks. They use Japanese onomatopoeia for spell names, so the English language version of that is frizz, sizz, crack, boom, whoosh.
Oh yeah,
I love those.
I love the spell names.
We'll forever love it.
I mean, Wes and Zach, all three of us are old schoolers, but I think I prefer frizz, frizzle, frizz to was it Blaze, Blazemore, Blazemost?
I mean,
my favorite was
totally knew what those things meant, though.
I liked Dragon Warrior 1's Hurt and Hurt More. Those were really evocative names.
I think it was just Hurt. I think it was just Hurt More, and then you got Heal, and was maybe Sleep. I don't remember. Oh,
it wasn't a lot of spells.
It's not a lot, and I think they added more in the Game Boy Color version I played. But all of us are playing the DS version or later, so we're basically going to be working with the same language and same terms, but I apologize if I accidentally call like Maya and Mina, Mara and Nara, because I did live with those names for, something like whatever the difference in time for me first playing the remakes was, let's say 20 years. But they were able to incorporate old weird localizations in Ragnar McRyan and Torneko Talun in ways that I thought are very clever and fun. But I mean, we talked about the accents in Ragnar's chapter, and spoiler alert, he does save the children, or at least 2 of them, and live happily ever after and gain like 5 levels in a row as a reward, which is a hell of a great reward.
It's a long wait too.
Yeah. Yeah, you just got to sit there pressing A for a while because he's gaining so many levels at once. But
he's gonna put a kettle on. Gotta hang out.
But the gist of it is that there's a destined hero being born in the world, and the monster army knows that the hero is still a child, so they're going around and kidnapping or killing any children they can find. And Ragnar decides, I need to go out and save all the rest of the wee bairns and find the hero. And chapter 1 ends with him departing his kingdom. So we've talked about him a little bit already, but do we have any other final thoughts on Ragnar?
I like the heel slime that joins the party.
Yeah.
Oh, Healy.
I mean, and you kind of talked about Alana talking about this before, but like I think that like the heel slime is like key to the way that chapter works. I mean, assuming this is your first RPG, like, and this is your first chapter, like it works really well because like I don't know, you the healing happens for you, and really all you have to do is hit.
Yeah.
It feels like a perfect introduction to an RPG. Like if I was going to tell a person to play an RPG, I would tell them Dragon Quest XI. But if they had, if they had some patience, like I feel like the Ragnar chapter is a really good choice.
Well, that also kicks off a long and illustrious history of monsters joining your party in Dragon Quest, doesn't it? I think this is the first time in those first 4 games that you get a monster in your party, at least for a bit.
Yeah, pretty
think
much,
so.
because monster recruiting's 5, isn't it? So
Yeah, that's where it really kicked into full swing.
And there's a lot of party members that can join you in Dragon Quest III, but I'm pretty sure they're all human. There is a little baby dragon that joins your party later, but that's not 3. One last thing, when Healy joins you, you still really only control and manipulate Ragnar. You can have Healy heal you in the menu, but Healy is his or her own person in combat, and you don't control them directly. And that's maybe the biggest change from gameplay from original NES Dragon Quest IV to modern systems, that you can control your whole party. Because in OG Dragon Quest IV, you only control the main character, which is Ragnar in Chapter 1, Alina in Chapter 2, etc. But in Chapter 5, you choose who's in your party once you have the whole gang together. But you still can only control the hero, which gives you some truly meme-worthy moments of Christo/Cyril trying to cast Thwack and missing when his party members are dying around him.
It really affected party. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, no,
that's some Persona 3 like Marin Karen nonsense, isn't it?
Yep.
Like,
It's like, Mitsuru, I don't want you to cast anything besides Mind Charge and Mabufudine, but why are you Marin Karening all over the battlefield?
Yep.
What the hell are you doing, homegirl? But okay, anyway, that is a different first game in a series to reach European shores. My bad.
But the balance of the party is like drastically changed by being able to control them as a result. Like you would never want Kirill in your party, and
Yeah,
the
but
old
Kirill's
days.
like the best character in this game outside of Alina.
So powerful.
I mean, like he has great defense. He can equip. It's getting a little ahead of ourselves, but like the liquid metal sword. I mean, like his spells are excellent. But in the OG version, like I would never have been caught dead with that dude in my party.
He has
poor
the best.
Kirill.
He has the best combination of skills and armor selection in the game, other than the hero. But he was he was hamstrung by having just the most idiotic battle AI in the NES version. And I'm not exaggerating with it. They're called Whack and Thwack now, but they were called Beat and Defeat on the NES version. And like you'd be fighting the final boss of the game, and you'd have one party member dead and 2 party members critical, and he would still cast Defeat. It's like, dude,
This is my moment.
It's like, Motherland! No, absolutely not. But it's and in the NES version, when I beat it, like my dedicated healer was Nara/Mina instead of Nara/Mina instead of Christo/Cyril because of that AI. But now you can fully control your party members except for Healy. But Healy is such a good little slime that I can't stay mad at them. That's the big change. Being able to control everyone means that you feel much better about putting in Boria Mara or Boria Boria Maya. That's right. I'm going to be mixing up names. I'm going to be mixing up names for the rest of my life, it turns out. Boria, Maya, or Cyril for the. Or is it supposed to be Cyril or Kirill? Because I'm thinking
it's Kirill.
I know it's supposed to be a Russian K. I'm thinking of it like a Greek K. I know that's wrong, but I just want to call him Cyril. So I'm just gonna keep getting names wrong for the rest of my video game playing.
There's no voice acting. You're golden.
You should hear me chat when I'm playing Monster Hunter with my best friend. I think he and I are both 36. So, wait, no, I'm 35. Whoops, I can't even remember my own age. He and I,
I'm older than you, and I'm not 36 yet.
Yeah. He and I are both 35, and most of our chats is trying to remember the name of the monster we are fighting at that moment. Yeah, back to Dragon Quest names, I guess. The change in being able to control your whole party is huge, and especially huge in Chapter 2, because you have 3 party members almost from the very beginning, with maybe the greatest female character of the NES era, Alana, the Princess of Zamoska. Your first impression
Stop it, Wes. Stop.
Your first impression of this perfect character is, Princess, why aren't you being enough of a princess? And then her kicking down the wall of her room to go on an adventure.
Not the first time she kicks down a wall, door, or what have you in the game.
Excellent.
If she somehow teamed up with Dogi from East for an entire RPG,
Oh
no wall would be safe. It would just be a wall crushing game start to finish. I'd play that. And
Yeah.
both of them are used to hanging out with silent protagonists of Destiny.
It's true.
But Elena's chapter is her leaving her castle, desiring to go on an adventure, and her one of the castle's priests, Kirill, and her tutor, Boria, insists on accompanying her, which is good because Kirill and Boria are very, very capable Dragon Quest IV versions of Dragon Quest III priest and mage jobs.
Yes.
And I should mention, this is true of Dragon Quest IV and Dragon Quest XI. Each main character is basically an approximation of one of the Dragon Quest III jobs. Hero, obviously, and Ragnar is a soldier/warrior. Elena is a martial artist/fighter. And I just mentioned Kirill and Boria, but you have a pretty solid trio for Elena's run of adventure, which involves thwarting human sacrifice and a kidnapping, and winning a tournament, and saving her father, and winning a tournament in maybe less than 24 hours of game time. A startling amount of adventure for just an hour and a half long chapter.
She keeps herself busy.
Yeah. Maybe got drafted by Wes before me in a certain draft.
I'm going to hear about this every podcast from now until eternity.
I drafted.
That is correct, sir.
I drafted someone else from Dragon Quest IV in my run, and I think I stole him from under your nose as well, Zach.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
We'll talk about. We'll negotiate that later.
It'll come up again, I'm
Spoil
sure.
it.
Back to Dragon Quest IV. Chapter 2 is sort of if Ragnar's chapter was an approximation of Dragon Quest 1 with really one important character, Dragon Quest 2 is the analog for Chapter 2 of Dragon Quest 4, because you have a party of 3, and you're sort of learning the party dynamics. The boss fights are more complicated. I actually died against the first boss of Chapter 2, because I just strolled into that church thinking I could beat them at level 2 with no
problem.
With no spells other than the starting ones. But no, you're intended to grind a little bit, figure out the skills of your new characters, and then use combinations of heal, crack, and sap to defeat that first boss at the human sacrifice village in the north.
Yeah, I mean, the party composition is even the same, right?
Yeah.
You have a fighter who's sort of your main character who has no spells. The main character in Dragon Quest II, who didn't get drafted, by the way, is very powerful, and he's the only useful game in Dragon Quest II, the OG version at least. But you have a priest and you have a mage. I mean, it's the same idea. I think that one of the things that I find really fascinating about this game is the ways in which, even in I know we think of all of these games as ancient history, right? They're the beginning of the genre, but they're calling back to different elements of what Dragon Quest is in really interesting ways. And I think that the split of this party is what RPGs are, right? It's you have your fighter, you have your healer, you have your mage, and there's no tank there, but Kirill or Alina kind of qualify. And just the ways in which, it acknowledges the way in which Dragon Quest codified what an RPG is, but also the ways in which this game acknowledges that. The chapter system, I think, and it's funny because coming off of Suikoden 3, where I complained about the chapter system, here I think it actually works much more brilliantly and much more simply, really.
One of my favorite moments in Dragon Quest games in general is that first moment where you have to set out and you have to you're weak. You have to go and get the money for your first copper sword, and you have to buy the better armor, and you kind of have to do that grind that Michael was talking about, where you go and you You go as far as you can until you're too low on hit points and herbs, and you circle back, and you get 4 distinct versions of that grind in Dragon Quest IV, which is one of the reasons I loved it back on the NES. It was like 4 brand new games starting up right at the beginning.
You get 4 mini games to give greater context to your party before starting the quote unquote real game in Chapter 5, and those 4 vignettes feel so different from each other, not just because they have different main characters, but like you're playing a different kind of game each time, like Zach mentioned, because Chapter 3 is not the solo party of Dragon Quest 1 or the 3-person party of Dragon Quest 2. You're almost a behind the scenes person. You're a town NPC breaking free of the cycle of being the weapon shop merchant.
Engaging capitalism at its best, yes.
A rogue capitalist separating himself from the Matrix.
He took the red pill.
Yeah, with I think safely the second or third best mustache of the game. Not quite at the level of Ragnar, definitely competing with Boria for Dragon Quest IV facial hair. The Tornico Taloon chapter, I went into this game, I mentioned this a little bit before we recorded, I went into this game, again, I've played it before, but it's been more than 12 years, so there's parts of it I only vaguely remember, or forgetting that he was supposed to go on his own adventure, I just did cycles of him working at the weapon shop for at least 45 minutes, way too long. I think I was listening to a podcast at the same time, so it wasn't like I was, just staring bloodshot-eyed into my DS for a whole night. But it's a little bit more complicated than working at the weapon shop until you have 2,000 gold.
Yeah, I guess still though, the other 2 chapters have still been building up to this, because a lot of the time you do need to talk to characters to figure out where you're going next or what to do next. Like in Chapter 1, you have to go back and forth, don't you, between the 2 towns to find out that, someone's husband's missing, and then you find out he's in prison, and then you go back and talk to the wife and take her back to her partner to save him. And I think you do something similar in Alina's chapter, or at least you have to talk to someone in particular and then go back and forth. But
you have to, when there's an imposter princess trying to masquerade, she's masquerading as Elena to get attention after you thwart the human sacrifice, and you have to, she gets abducted. You find out by talking around town that the ransom note was telling you to go to the graveyard at night. Then you go there. Then you you have to exchange her ransom for a special item that's in a cave outside of town, and basically there is event flagging in this game that is typical of NES RPGs of the time, or just early JRPGs in general. But I don't think any of it's that unfair. You can figure out most of it by just talking to a lot of people in town.
No, and I think Torneco's character is the first one where it's here you go, off you go. Not only are you on your own, you're doing something entirely different. You mentioned the day and night cycle system. This is the first Dragon Quest game that has the day and night cycle. Is that right?
No, it's in Dragon Quest 3. Wow. It's in Dragon Quest. I definitely remember in Dragon Quest 3 you had to do certain events only at night. But yeah, you're right. It might have been earlier than Dragon Quest 3, but I definitely remember some plot events needing to happen at night in DQ3.
Okay, cool.
It might be older than that, though. Was there a day and night cycle in 1 or 2?
I don't believe so in 2.
There was, at least, it might be one of the newer version things, but I played the Switch version of 2, which was a decision that I certainly made with my life. And it does have a day and night cycle, but it's not important to the actual flow of the game.
Okay.
It just makes enemies stronger on the overworld at night.
And maybe zombies are more likely to show or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because undead and demons, they can be some real bad mother lovers in old school Dragon Quest games. I had to run away from some fights in Dragon Quest IV because I was just trying to walk to Endor, and it's I don't know if I can handle 2 skeletons, 3 restless armors, and a heal slime. I don't know. Kirill might run out of HP before I can properly deal with these. Again, in just the first 2 chapters, in just chapter 2, I got, I think, 2 game overs because I just got way too ambitious with what I thought I could accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, luckily inns and medicine herbs are really cheap. Yeah, like consistently through Dragon Quest, like everything feels fairly affordable. Like I never feel like I'm scrambling for anything, even if I have to grind for a little bit. Like it's never a pain.
It's total hubris why I died every time I did.
Yeah, no, I get it. Don't worry.
You always think you can push a little further.
Yeah, it's I've played all the Dragon Quest games. I can totally handle this cave to the Armlet of Transmutation. It's like, and then like, oh, now these are 7 bats that won't let me run away from them. Great.
Oh.
The bats in oh god, the 4th chapter. Oh my god, in the cave, you know.
They're a trial.
Yeah, in the mines, they're a pain in the butt.
But chapter 3, staying to the present a little bit, you basically work at a weapon shop. You by talking around town, you find a rumor of a lockbox that you can find. Is it called the Iron Box or something in this game? I forget.
It's called the Steel Strongbox. Steel
Strongbox, that's what it is. And that's an item that lets you not lose money if you die, which I discovered in Chapter 2 a couple times, that they do that Pokemon completely cribbed from Dragon Quest, that if you die, you go back to the nearest town and lose half your money. But and Tornico gets I think they communicate to you just how boring the drudgery life, like the life of being a wage slave is, and sort of encourage. And Tornico has this very sweet wife and son that care about him. And if you're smarter than me and realize that there's something you're supposed to be doing besides going to the item shop every day or weapon shop every day, you can sort of Tornico through the player gets the idea to set out on his own, find the Steel Strongbox, and then sort of start doing Dragon Quest stuff in his corner of the world. Eventually, that leads him to a new kingdom. Is it Ballymoral or Balmoral?
There's Ballymoral, and then you have to go to Endor as well eventually, don't you?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, he's doing the things that essentially put him on the map, because he has to arrange for the bridge to be fixed, doesn't he? He has to provide money to someone to build a cave which connects 2 of the different areas. So, yeah.
And those bridges, you see them broken in Chapter 2 in Elena's chapters. And minor spoilers, you will navigate those bridges and that tunnel in Chapter 5 when your party comes together. The foreshadowing is very strong in this game, but I think Tornico's chapters, once you sort of figure out what to do, they're pretty sweet, because you're trying to find ways of amassing money quickly, and you can do that by opening up your own shop in Ballymoral and having your wife do some truly ruthless business, because
she's the real star of this chapter. Honestly,
she is better at making money than any character in any RPG I've ever heard of, and that includes Ichiban Kasuga.
You can literally buy something at cost, and she's going to sell it for more.
Yeah, it's crazy how talented your wife is in Chapter 3 of Dragon Quest IV. But basically, it's getting enough money and collecting enough weapons for a delivery to the king that allows you to sort of go on a money-making expedition, and that is roughly the end of Chapter 3, or at least how I remember Chapter 3 ending, because I'm in the middle of it right now. Is that basically it?
The cave is the last thing you have to do, isn't it?
Okay.
Oh, right, the cave where you...
Yeah. But it's important, you can hide, there's a part in that game where you get to Endor, and it's you get your shop, and it's you have to make, what is it, you have to sell 6 steel broadswords and 6 iron armor.
You have to have them and then give them to the king. Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to make money, and it's oh my god.
The best way to
the drop rate around there is pretty good on those things, but if you just even if you get 1 broadsword, that's enough to go sell it through your wife, who, as Sollosi accurately pointed out, is a ruthless business person.
I wish I'd done that. Yeah.
Yeah. No. The best way to make money is to do a little bit of questing around, and there's a couple optional treasure chests that give you a lot of money. Go around and find a couple of those, and then use your wife's capitalism magic to make that money balloon until you have money for the steel swords and iron armor that you need. But
I wish I'd done that. Yeah, I did it. I did it with selling the weapons to the person in the castle, because I don't know. I just didn't really think about using my wife, which was a really bad decision. Yeah.
And Zach, I think you and I both know that the makers of Yakuza enjoy Dragon Quest, and I think that we just discovered exactly how they came up with the business sim minigame idea.
That's true.
Oh,
You're not
there we
wrong.
go.
You're not
Yeah.
wrong, my friend.
It all
I mean,
comes
like,
back to Yakuza and Dragon Quest for me.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, the thing that I think is fascinating about this chapter is just how, like, many different, as we were talking about, like, how many different ways you can approach it. Like, I remember playing this as a kid. Like, I didn't understand that I could do any of that. And so, like, I just went out and fought, like, fights for, like, hours.
Yeah.
To build up my gold and, like, get, like, the items. And, like, I had, like, 6 steel broadswords. And then I was like, okay, now I have enough money to go buy the armors that I need. But, like, just, like, a little bit of understanding of, like, the way that the system works makes it go so much faster. And I know that NES RPGs and even, like, NES Zelda is known for, like, being non-linear. But, like, it's, like, if you compare it to, like, Chapter 1 and 2, it's so much more non-linear than those. And, like, there's so many different ways you can approach it and so many different ways. Like, it feels like the most true to an NES RPG in some ways, but also, like, the most forward-looking. Because, like, what game was doing this? Like you selling stuff at the time. Like, I can't think of one.
And I mean, like, manipulating your wife's shop is the best way to earn money in Chapter 3. But you can also hire mercenaries when you go out on these expeditions to different caves. And Tornico doesn't play like any of the other characters. I mean, he represents the merchant job from Dragon Quest 3, which was sadly not really in Dragon Quest 11. You have a merchant buddy, but not a proper merchant party member in that game. And a lot of his skills are things like analyzing enemy stats or doing silly tricks that would have been either the merchant or the goof off job in Dragon Quest 3. And like I think that you learned RPG lessons from the first 2 chapters, and this RPG lesson is how to make a lot of money and what goes on when what you can do besides just doing the regular quest, and sort of forcing you to learn Tornico a little bit, who's an unconventional party member. It's so different from the first 2 chapters.
I mean, and you could also sell armor at, like, the castle in, I don't know, whatever that Kingdom of Source of the Bee is, like, for more money there, too. I mean, because, like, they're desperate for it. So you could also make money that way. Like, there's, like 4 different ways you can approach almost everything in this game, or in this chapter, and I just think it's so cool.
I mean, Balmoral is trying to arm themselves for war against Endor, but you discover that the Prince of Balmoral and the Princess of Endor are in love with each other. So by playing matchmaker a little bit, you get to stop the war with, kisses, which is exactly what I love in an RPG. And also the Princess of Endor is the person whose marriage was up for grabs in the tournament that Alana fought in. So that's the other through line from chapter 2 to 3.
The chapters feed together in this really interesting way where you hear rumors in one chapter that are the main focus in another chapter.
There's one rumored character that you keep hearing about that is so important later, but we'll get to him near the end of this episode, I think. In chapter 4, which again I haven't played yet, so I'm working on like ghosts of a memory from 13 years ago now, where the 2 twin sisters, Mina and Maya, are living a bit of a hard life. Their father died under tragic circumstances, and they're trying to escape a life of slavery or confinement. Right?
Yes. They're trying to avenge the father's death.
I mean, like, they're dancers, and it's not. I mean, like, the person who's in charge of them is not like
okay. Yeah.
It's not Dragon Quest V. Let's put it that way. Like,
right. All right. I was maybe
totally supportive as they leave.
I was conflating, the dancers of this game with the dancer in Octopath Traveler. Maybe that's my bad.
Oh, Primrose.
Eventually they're looking to avenge their father's death, who was killed, and he was killed by a demon named Balzac, and they team up with this master lockpicker, escape through a mine, and then track down Balzac. Right? Am I remembering this?
It's a bit more than that, yeah. So they go down.
I definitely skipped some steps. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So they find in the bottom of a cave. They find Ujam, who is their father's friend, and he's the one. They end up going to this port town, and then they have to. The chancellor of that town, will only leave his room. Like, the king's missing, isn't he, or something? And the chancellor will only leave his room if you make a loud noise. So you have to go to the mine. The mine is overrun, and there's smoke coming out of it, and you have to get a powder keg and blow that up to scare the chancellor and go see the king. And lo and behold, Balzac's in there somewhere. So, yeah. And then you have to run away, and you get on a ship and escape.
It's got this interesting little through line that it's just hinting at the main plot of the game itself, that, you know, Balzac was an alchemist and he could never turn lead into gold, but he uncovered this secret to evolution that isn't really delved deep into in the chapter, but it's spoken with enough reverence that you get the impression, oh, this is what the villains are really after, and this is why everything went down, was, you know, a side effect of his alchemical research.
Yeah, it's the first time you really feel like the overarching plot's coming in, definitely.
I mean, you see hints of what's going on, of the larger, like, world-threatening demon army at different points. Like you mentioned, there's the children being kidnapped or killed in Chapter 1. There's mention of the strongest person that anyone's ever seen is in the tournament at Endor in Chapter 2, a person named Sorrow, who ends up not fighting in the tournament. So. But it's hinted at just being an incredibly powerful person. And then in Tornico's chapter, there's hints of there's a planned or ramping civil war between Balmoral and Endor. But I think part of why they so easily enter a ceasefire is because of a looming threat from the demon army, right? Or at least there's mention of the demon army building when you talk around the castle.
I don't remember that particular thing, but it's possible. I could misremember.
The ceasefire between the two kingdoms, between Balmoral and Endor, they only stop because they get married, don't they?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I'm making a mistake. But a different king, Elena's father, at the very end of Chapter 2, when you return, when you turn to her town, having won the tournament, every person in the castle has disappeared, and that happens right after. Her father tells her of a dream that he had about a child and a demon lord.
Yeah, I mean more like directly. Like I didn't mean to like erase like the fact that it had been drip fed to us before, especially with Sorrow being mentioned in Chapter 2. I think more like that this is the first time it's like directly involving the characters who are central to the story. Like. Yeah. This
game does foreshadowing very well, but the events of Chapter 4 are much more direct and immediate than the foreshadowing in the previous 3 chapters.
Yeah.
Jill, this makes sense because I'm pretty sure they're the 2 characters that join you first.
Yeah,
Chapter 5.
The characters join in the reverse order of introduction. So it's Mina and Maya first, then Tornico, then Elena's crew, and then Ragnar is the final normal party member. Then maybe some stuff happens after Ragnar. It's a hell of a cast. I'm trying to make sure I'm counting correctly. It's 8 main characters that are all on this cover, and they are different ages, shapes, and sizes and sexes. And this is one of the best, most diverse casts in early RPGs. I feel like. What kind of motley crew did you have before this game in JRPGs? Like whatever was going on in FF2.
Maybe it's one of the earlier Phantasy Stars, probably.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Phantasy Star 2 comes out after this one, right?
Yeah.
Phantasy Star 1 was Master System, is definitely before this, but I'm not sure. I do not know nearly enough about the release schedule of Phantasy Star to properly know it.
Phantasy Star 2 is 1989, so no.
There we go. I'm wrong. Yeah.
Oh. That doesn't diminish the point that this cast is awesome.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, no, definitely.
They're a very colorful bunch. Colorful.
Yeah, and not just because on the old NES sprites they each had to be a different color or at least a different shape just to distinguish them. Because I mean, those old boxy sprites on the NES were a little rough to deal with.
And in the NES, it seems like, storytelling was always a little more abbreviated. You had to fit only so much text into a cartridge. So getting that time with each of those parties, so even if they're not directly telling you who they are, you're getting that feeling as you play as them. It helps to really flesh out the characters before you actually pull them all together in a way that I don't know had been done before and wouldn't be done much again for some time.
Yeah, it's a really good way of contextualizing the story as well within the game, like rather than having like this wall of text that tells you like, just this year the king was murdered by something, blah 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 kind of thing. You've actually got like first-hand experience of what is the seeds being planted around this world, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is technically the first game of what is now called the Zenithian trilogy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
like it's unrelated
Yes.
to, so 1, 2, and 3 are like connected in a way because of the hero Erdrick, obviously. And then you've got these 3 games on the NES and the Super Nintendo that were all Zenithian. So
Yeah.
I'm
And I-
interested
and I-
to see how that plays in.
And I think it's always interesting because, like, to me, like Dragon Quest III, like sort of perfects a lot of the elements of what it is to be like an NES RPG. Like you have like all this choice about mechanics and things like that, and like story is like sort of like over here, and like there's some cool stuff, obviously at the end of Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior 3. But like Dragon Quest 4 and Phantasy Star 2 to some degree, like because it came before, obviously, like they start like this idea that like story matters a lot in RPGs. And obviously Final Fantasy IV is the one that really kind of codifies that. But like I think that like this game is important for that reason, like this idea of like story is significant, characters are significant. They're not totally fleshed out here because like obviously they're silent. And in the original version, like it's not like there's party chat in the original version. But like the idea that story is something to focus on and something to think about feels kind of unique in this version, which is what I feel like this is like sort of the progenitor of like a lot of SNES RPGs.
And I mean, to a degree, a lot of characters with medium or large casts in RPGs can be kind of set it and forget it. Even later Dragon Quest games, like how much can you tell me about Nevin and Amos? Right?
Who?
Right. Nevin joins as part of the story, and I think Amos might be an optional character. But you being able to play the backstory of your 7 supporting characters before meeting them as the main character fleshes them out so much in a way that I think still feels cool. Like playing this game in 2021, it's like, oh, I'm playing these Dragon Quest games are very, very often organized in vignettes or small quests, like building the puzzle of the larger quest. And in Dragon Quest IV, the early vignettes are introducing your characters to the player, and I think that's really good. Like it feels like a good idea that works 30 years later. That's crazy town.
There's this little serotonin hit you get too, like seeing all these things happen, seeing these characters. The first time you see that character mentioned in someone else's story, that I know that excitement of the Leo meme, you know, pointing at the TV, that excitement like is present, like even today, playing it today.
I mean, I've used this metaphor before, but like Dragon Quest games feel like you're assembling a puzzle, or that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In part because it's so good at foreshadowing and references and tying up loose ends in a way that I always find satisfying. Like when you see things that were hinted at occur, or something that you like were anticipating just lands really satisfyingly is so fulfilling. Like and Dragon Quest IV does a really good job of that. But Audra, I think you're a little further away than a lot of us because you're at least partway through Chapter 5. And this is your first time playing the game. Do you have a specific idea or specific expectation of something that you think might happen later?
Not really. I'm just kind of along for the ride at the moment.
All right. Well, Alana, same question to you. I mean, you've played many Dragon Quest games. This is your first time playing 4. I think you're in Chapter 5 now as well. You told me before we started recording. Do you have any kind of idea or expectation for something happening later in this game?
I mean, I guess this Sorrow person is someone to look out for, aren't they? So, yeah,
that's true.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess I am a little bit into Chapter 5, so I know the initial beginnings of what happens. Obviously, we're going to get our hero, and we are going to go on an adventure, typical Dragon Quest style. So I'm assuming I'm going to be leaving my village under terrible circumstances, or maybe good circumstances, because sometimes you do in Dragon Quest games. And then I know the correct answer. Don't worry, I've already got past that bit. And,
yeah, that happens. That happens really early in Chapter 5.
It's literally like the second thing that happens. So yeah, you give your dad a fish, and then oh dear.
That sounds like a good metaphor for life.
Now, one last question. We could save this for the next episode, but I want to talk about it now. I played as the male Dragon Quest hero when I played this game 13 years ago, so obviously went with the lady this time. How about her hair? That awesome,
I love her hair.
That amazing mane of green hair is something else.
There's a lot of things talking to me in this game. Like, there is a character called Alana, which has one letter different from my name. There's a girl with curly hair, and I have curly hair, and green is my favorite color. So, you know, not saying anything, but Dragon Quest IV is, like, appealing to me in many different ways.
I miss days where you could pick between a male or female main character in Dragon Quest, because it feels like such a fun choice or a fun option in Dragon Quest 3, 4, and 9. That,
yeah, or even just design your own character, I suppose. Like, yeah, that would be so cool. I mean, you can in 9, can't you, if I remember?
Oh, yeah, you can fully design
your whole party.
Yeah, the sort of canon female Dragon Quest 9 main character has sort of short pink hair, but you can completely design him or her up to your specifications.
Yeah, the design of the female protagonist in Dragon Quest IV is just one of my all-time favorite hero designs in Dragon Quest history.
Yeah, the half leotard, the shoulder pad, the circlet, the hair is my favorite part, but it's it is pretty unique and pretty excellent. I love her.
Sollosi, we've talked a lot about how much we enjoy Toriyama's designs for female characters, like, in particular, and, like, I think she's, like, right up there. So, yeah.
Toriyama is so good at designing tough girls that I like especially Jade in 11, Ira in 7,
Red.
the female main characters, Red from 8, I would say Bianca in 5, like Toriyama's female character designs.
Deborah.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. My mother's name is Deborah.
Excellent. See.
Although amusingly, maybe I said this in the podcast years ago, but when I played Dragon Quest V on the DS for the first time, I did pick Deborah because she was the one I hadn't picked before, and I named the two, and again, I had played Dragon Quest V before a couple times, so I had the nuclear family in Dragon Quest V named after my parents, myself, and my sister.
That's sweet.
Adorable.
Yeah, in Dragon Quest V. Although I think just to make it a little bit different, I had the kids be Miguel and Marie instead of Michael and Mary.
Your best friend on Dragon Quest V. Confirmed.
You know, I wish I could say no just to continue my anti-Deborah stance, but I think that was my best Dragon Quest V run.
Got Bjorn that time, huh?
I got Bjorn and Starkers, and I recruited a Archdemon and a Great Dragon. It was a real good time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't talk about great dragons. Ugh.
No, please don't.
I mean, I just raised the level cap of my Great Dragon in Dragon Quest Tact a day or two ago, so that's
nice.
Oh boy. Okay, now if I'm talking about the Dragon Quest Gacha RPG, maybe it's definitely time to end the episode. Listeners, play Dragon Quest IV. Maybe don't play Dragon Quest Tact. Just throwing that out there. But I'm also throwing out there that this is not the end of Dragon Quest IV discussion on this podcast. Next week we're doing part 2 of our Dragon Quest IV mini-series. And then later this month, yet another Dragon Quest episode. But I don't want to share exactly what it's about yet. It will be about a certain villain from a certain Dragon Quest game. Okay, maybe you can figure it out from that alone. But
there's some options.
There are options, but there's one best option, and that will be the topic of discussion for in the last week of May on Retro Encounter. But after May and Retro Encounter, we have all of June planned out. We are doing 2 episodes on Knights in the Nightmare, which is a Sting Department Heaven game. The only game in that series of which I've played is Riviera the Promised Land. And Knights in the Nightmare is a really unique, really unusual RPG, and we have some very excited Knights in the Nightmare fans ready to discuss that game in June. But before we get to Knights in the Nightmare, I think we're going to do an episode to make 2 episodes to make us feel some feelings, because we're doing 1 episode on Nier Replicant, which had a recent remake. Thank you very much for your excellent written and video review of that game, Alana, from a few weeks ago.
No problem. Please go read it and check out the video.
Yes, I agree. And also I agree that if you want to feel some feelings in Final Fantasy XIV, you could play that Shadowbringers expansion. We are doing our final FF14 episode in June. I'm not sure if it's going to be the first or second week yet, but it's going to be all about Shadowbringers, and Shadowbringers is my favorite part of FF14's story, so I will be real jazzed to discuss that in a couple weeks. So coming in June, Nier Replicant, FF14 Shadowbringers, Knights in the Nightmare. And if you want to email us to discuss Dragon Quest or those 4 things or anything else at all, the best way to get in contact is to email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also visit rpgfan.com's message boards, our selection of many fine articles and reviews, or our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTubes, our Twitch channel, something streaming every day on that Twitch channel. And Retro Encounter is only one of 4 podcasts on RPG Fan, the others of which being Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness, Rhythm Encounter usually every 2 weeks about RPG music, and Phoenix Edge usually every week about a variety of topics, mostly current events. But you can review Retro Encounter or those other 3 podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, however you are listening to us. Please listen. Please provide feedback. We love listeners. We love feedback. And we also would love for you to reach out to us individually, but only exactly how we want you to. So let's share social media that we're willing to share, starting with you, Alana.
Best place to find me is on Twitter at Alana Hagues, or you can find me on the RPG Fan Discord as Alana.
Now, Zach.
You can find me on Discord at ZachW, and you can also email me at zachw@rpgfan.com.
Now, Audra, hit me.
You can hit me up, I guess, at AudraB@rpgfan.com for email.
I'm so jealous that Audra has managed to stay off Twitter all of these years, because the more I'm on Twitter, the less I wish I was on Twitter.
Correct.
Correct response.
And Wes, how can listeners find you?
You can join me on the Twitter Nightmare site at Wes Iliff. No promises you'll find much of value, but you're welcome to join me.
And if you definitely want to find nothing of value on Twitter, you can find me. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fans Discord, I am at Monsoon Mike. We still have plenty of Dragon Questing to do the rest of this month, and it will be all about Chapter 5, all about Hero versus Sorrow in next week. Thank you, good night, and good luck.